Too often Christians, when we get caught up in that selfish gospel, we project onto God who we want him to be. We want, God, I want you to be this in this scenario. God, I want you to be my healer right now because I need you to be. Yes, God heals. God is a healer. But too often, we just pick and choose the parts of the Bible we want in our life, and we set aside the rest of it. Have you guys ever been inconvenienced? Were you inconvenienced today? Was there a moment in your life that maybe you have been inconvenienced and you're like, I do not want to do this. This is too big of an inconvenience. I can think of 5 or 6 times today where I was inconvenienced. And typically, what it comes down to a willingness of being inconvenienced. You know, there is also, it's funny, when I look back to a number of times when I was younger playing hockey, there was a number of times where I'd be called up to a league higher than myself. They needed players. Players might have been injured. I used to play for the AA Rangers in Winnipeg. And that year, I remember being cut from the league above for the AAA Monarchs. I was the last player cut from the team, sitting alone in the dressing room, waiting for my name to be called to go talk to the coaches. And they cut me. They let me know. They let me go. But I remember a couple weeks later, when the season started, I got a call up to the Monarchs because they needed an extra player for the game. And I remember being like, oh wow, this is a last minute call up. I am amped up. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go do this. Why? Because hockey was a massive passion for me. It was easy for me to be inconvenienced because I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to go play great. I wanted to show them, you made a mistake by cutting me. I actually remember that game. I got 2 goals, 2 assists, game-winning goal. Man, I made them, as you can tell, I'm obviously not bitter at all by it. But with this thing, that was easy for me to rise up and accept the challenge. But then it also makes me think in tons of areas, how many times are we actually willing to rise up in an area that might not be our passion, might not be easy to do? I also, when I was in university, I used to run a student works painting business. And for me, this was one of the most convenient jobs of my life. I remember my summers were set up where I hired a bunch of my friends. I got a couple big painting jobs. So I got my crews to handle the day-to-day painting, and I would go around and I would do business type things, trying to find other jobs. But really, I enjoyed my summer. I remember watching like the whole FIFA World Cup. It was summer of 2006 when I was working. I had other guys working for me. But really, I remember some mornings, man, sleeping in, and my dad would come into the room, and he would just rip the sheets off my bed, being like a 17 or 18-year-old kid. And he'd be like, get out of bed, you got stuff to do. Because he didn't want me to fall into this pattern of what is convenient for me or what feels good. He wanted me to push into that inconvenience. Because oftentimes, when we are willing to move into that inconvenience, when we're willing to be inconvenienced, that is where a lot of the greatest things and breakthrough can happen in our life. And if you really think about it, our world is creating a culture of convenience. You can make a lot of money if you can find a way to make something more convenient for people. Convenience is all around us. We live in a microwave generation. We want things right now. I want my food. I want it fast. I want it quick. You know, I want like a 6-figure job without the skills or the time being put into it. You know, I want God's promises without the process that goes with it. I want miracles without the faith. Look at things like Netflix. Netflix, the reason why it's grown so big is because it has solved a problem of creating convenience to find what you want to watch. All you got to do is go to one place and you can find anything you want just by moving your thumb an inch to the left, an inch to the right. That is convenience. People make a lot of money at finding ways to make life more convenient for people. And if we're not careful of what's happening in our culture, this type of lifestyle, a lifestyle of convenience, can creep into our relationship with God. It can creep into our mandate from Jesus into reaching and seeking and saving the lost. Because a lot of times, that kind of stuff is not convenient. I got a question for you. Have you ever read the Bible? Have you ever looked inside the Bible? And have you ever looked in the Bible and been like, you know what? I don't know if I like that part. that part seems like a little too inconvenient. You know what? I'm going to pick and choose what I like and what I don't like. If you've said, no, I love all the Bible, you haven't read the whole Bible. There's a lot of things in the Bible that is inconvenient compared to our typical human nature. You know, I love the story of Pastor Leon's dad, Grandpa Cam or Pastor Cam, if you ever known him. Amazing, beautiful man. He lived a life of being willing to be inconvenienced. He was willing to be inconvenienced at a moment's notice. I love hearing stories of when he would be going through the line at the grocery store. And all of a sudden, if you look behind him, there's a massive line of people with groceries waiting. Why? Because there was an opportunity for him to witness, to talk with the person, the cashier in the line there, and to tell him about Jesus. He wouldn't care about the inconvenience he was creating for himself, maybe by running late somewhere, or inconveniencing people, or feeling inconvenienced by them yelling at him for holding up the line. He cared about seeking and saving the lost. And really, and the good news in the gospel, if you look at it, the gospel is largely inconvenient. And if we're not careful, the gospel can quickly become a selfish gospel, a convenient gospel. But obviously not to you guys because you're watching this. But if we're not careful, that gospel can become a selfish. We'll pick and choose what we like. We love the promises. We love the blessings. We love the good things that God says. But sometimes you might ignore the hard things. Sometimes we might ignore the inconvenient things. Sometimes if we're not careful, this lifestyle that we're used to being more and more convenient will creep into the way that we view the gospel. Hence, the selfish gospel. Too many Christians have created their own selfish gospel because it suits our needs. You know, the Bible, when you look at the Bible and what the Bible really is, the good news, the gospel. But the Bible is God's self-revelation. It's God telling us who He is. It's God telling us what He believes. It's God telling us who we are. It's God is telling us what we should follow, what we should do in certain situations. There's wisdom in this book. There's love in this book. It's God's self-revelation. And if you're in any relationship, a real proper relationship, you know, there's a lot of self-revelation, self-revealing going on in a relationship. When I met my wife, I allowed my wife to define who she is. She is allowed to define to me who she is. She tells me what she loves. She tells me what she believes. She shows me her passions. She shows me things that she's interested in. That is how I learn who she is. You notice that I don't project onto her who I want her to be. I don't say, you are this, you'll believe this, you'll do this. No, I don't do that. And the same thing with God, is God is revealing Himself to us through His Word, who He is. Too often Christians, when we get caught up in that selfish gospel, we project onto God who we want Him to be. We want, God, I want you to be this in this scenario. God, I want you to be my healer right now because I need you to be. Yes, God heals. God is a healer. But too often, we just pick and choose the parts of the Bible we want in our life, and we set aside the rest of it. And when we do that, as Christians, we are falling for the selfish gospel. We need to keep the main thing. Our purpose is to know Him, to commune with Him, to build relationship with Him. And I want to ask us, have we gotten away from that and started using the gospel for our own selfish things? Do we prioritize these things? You see, God in His Word, there's all these beautiful blessings. There are these promises. God is full of life. He wants you to have life and more abundantly. He wants you to walk in health. He wants you to walk in freedom. He wants you to walk in prosperity. He wants you to walk in joy, in peace, in patience. This is what God wants for us. Beautiful. I love every single one of those things. But if we want those things because we just want our life to be good and easier, because if we're honest with ourselves, all of those things make our life easier. But if it's only for that, if it's only for the reason of having an easy life, man, are we missing the mark. See, we want to walk in prosperity. We want to walk in health. We want to walk in joy. We want to walk in healing. We want to walk in all of these areas so that those who do not know Him, those who are lost, those who do not have a family, that we can, as Christians, that we can excel, that we can thrive in showing people what life is like with God, so that they can move into relationship and come back to this family that God is so desperately trying to piece together. If you're a father, if you're a mother, and you had a child that was lost, you would understand the pain, to a certain extent, that God feels when he has family members that aren't a part of the family. You would go to the ultimate extent to try to get your kid back. That's what God is trying to do with every single person. But yet us, we are left here. Jesus came and showed the way, and us as Christians are the hands and feet of Jesus. And we need to go to every extent to seek and to save the lost, to bring hope, to bring love. And too often, if we let a life of convenience or a life of selfishness lead us, then we're going to be missing opportunities left, right, and center to show people God's love.